Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Squared Up Coffee Break webinar on Squared Up licensing. My name is Matthew Long, and I'm joined today by my colleague Nathan Coulson.
Hello, thank you for joining us.
This isn't maybe the most sexy of topics, licensing, let's be honest, but licensing is one of those things where when you get it wrong, Squared Up locks you out, and then your users can't get into Squared Up anymore, and monitoring product stops working. So I think this is definitely something where we need to sort of make sure we cover this and look at it, and to make sure everything stays up and working quite happily. So Nathan's going to lead us through this week. If you haven't ever dealt with Nathan before, if you've been to our sales@squareup.com email address with any licensing queries, or you were at Ignite last year and took a demo on our HoloLens, then you'll have met Nathan. But he's great with the stuff, so he's going to walk us through it all today. So Nathan, what are we going to be covering?
So we're going to be covering what licenses are included in an enterprise package. So the primary, secondary, and test licenses will go through kind of the features of all of those. We're going to go through some common kind of issues with licensing and how to troubleshoot them. And we're also going to go through how to upgrade your license if you need to. Okay,
cool. So the sort of full gamut of everything you might need to do with that. So let's kick off with the sort of different licenses you get when you purchase Squared Up.
Great. So so when you purchase an enterprise license pack, whether that's an enterprise starter pack or EAM kind of license pack, you will get a primary, a secondary, and a test dev license. And the features of the primary license are just simply determined by the license package that you purchased. So as an example, if you purchase a standard EAM license package, that will include all features, including Vader, for example, and 20 named users for 1 year.
So like the primary license basically is your main license.
Exactly.
If you're going to production, you're having a single Squared Up server, that's the license you care about. That's the one you're going to import.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So what about the other two? What's the secondary license?
So the secondary license is only used alongside the primary license if you want high availability deployment of Squared Up.
Right.
So it can't be used as a standalone license. It's not meant to be a spare license. But if you want to have Squared Up kind of highly available to your users, it is enabled for 3 activations. So you can have multiple kind of failover servers kind of hosting Squared Up.
Okay. So if you've got your primary server has a primary license on it. You've got 2 sort of load balance servers with it as well. That would be your 2 other activations. What about if let's say you're making a massive farm of 7 like failover servers? Can you do that, or are you limited to just 3?
I would say just kind of send us an email to support@squaredup.com and we'll kind of help you through the process.
Okay.
And another thing to note is just that the secondary license doesn't really have features of itself. It just shares the features and the named user count of the primary license is connected to.
Right. And that also means that if I'm correct, if the secondary servers lose contact with the primary for, I think it's 30 days, they effectively revert back down to being just like a 3 named user license.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So if your, like say your primary server goes down and you decide, actually, we're not going to bother to bring it back up, we're just going to let it sort of go and build a new one, you'd need to activate your primary license on another server to get all your features back in your named user account.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Okay, cool. And then there's the third license type as well, wasn't there? The test dev one.
Yes. So so this is a license that you can activate kind of another instance of Squared Up on, which can be connected to a separate SCOM management group. So you might want to do this for a number of reasons. So for example, if you wanted to kind of test updates.
Right. So you're doing you're doing monthly patching, let's install some iOS updates to make sure it hasn't broken Squared Up. You can do that on this server and verify it before pushing that sort of thing to production.
Exactly.
Presumably, if you have like a very small management group as well, like in your dev environment, you could use it for that too. But it's not supposed to be for production use. And I guess that reflects why it's missing open access.
Yeah, so it's missing open access, Vader, and HA support,
Cool.
And it has 3 named users, so it's very much for testing.
Okay, cool. That makes sense. So we've kind of covered the different licenses now. So actually, I know one of the things you get asked a lot about is offline activation.
Absolutely.
So we've actually got a demo of that now. So
Great.
Offline activation, basically Squared Up needs to be online, have an internet connection to be able to activate. So for those of you who are using Squared Up in an environment where your Squared Up server doesn't have access because maybe there's a proxy server or there's firewalls in the way and you don't want to open it up just for activation, we do give you the ability to do an offline activation. So you bring up Squared Up and Nathan's going to talk us through the process.
Right. So first of all, you need to navigate to your Squared Up server /Squared Up v3/activate, and you'll come to this screen. And you should already have kind of a license key kind of in place. And we're just going to assume that you're going to reactivate that key. So if you just click enter a new key,
okay,
and we're just going to put that key or whatever key you're activating on that server in that box.
So let's say if I've upgraded or something, I've got a bigger
Exactly,
license, so I'd whack that in there. Okay, now normally if I hit activate, that wouldn't work because I'm offline.
Exactly.
So I need to click offline activation.
Precisely, yeah.
Okay.
So you'd put it into the manual request box and put request.
Okay.
And then if you just click copy, this is some text that will be kind of sent off to us. So you need to then kind of switch on to, for example, your own computer with internet access, and then navigate to activate.squareup.com.
Okay, so maybe I'm RDP'd into this server. I can copy and paste it across, or I save it on a text file or bring it over and open it up on my desktop. I do have internet connectivity here, so I'm going to actually open this here. Okay, so this is the link, and then I just drop it in.
Exactly, drop it in, and then click activate.
Okay.
And this will kind of
licensing gods.
Fingers crossed. So this will just take a few seconds, but it will then kind of allow you to download a licensing file.
Right. Okay, and that's what lets the server, which doesn't have internet access, activate.
Precisely.
Basically.
So this is just talking to us at the moment, and if you just click download license file.
Sure. So that gets saved. Okie dokie.
And if you switch back to the kind of squared up screen, and you can click install license or navigate to kind of squared up v3/install license.
Oh, so if you want to go straight there.
Exactly, yeah.
Maybe it's taking a day or two. Okay, cool. Let me just show in folder. It's going to show my other screen, isn't it?
Yep. Oh, you can click there and you can find
cool.
find the file as well.
That's the one.
There we go. Great. And there we go. That's activated.
Okay, and I can just follow the normal wizard now to go
and then you're back in, and now the kind of new the new features of your license are now active. Whether that's, for example, renewing your license, or you've upgraded your license, or if you're, for example, migrating.
Okay.
So yeah, we're going to go through a couple of those scenarios and what can go wrong as well.
Right. So speaking of activations, I guess the most obvious error you're going to get when you try and activate is this one.
Yes. Yes. So with your primary license, as you know, for reasons I'm sure you can understand, they will ship with only a single activation.
Okay.
By default. So if you try and activate that key kind of another time, for example, if you're migrating into another server, you'll get this error message.
Okay. Maximum number of activations exceeded for the provided key. That's pretty obvious. So I mean, in terms of sort of dealing with this, I guess this is a sort of context squared up sort of scenario to try and rectify this problem.
Absolutely, yeah. So just drop us a line at support@squaredup.com and we'll help you through the process.
Okay, so a good example of like how this may occur is, you mentioned it already, but like, so you're migrating to a new Squared Up server because you want to give this a bit more grunt to your box, or maybe you're rebuilding it, or you're changing your naming convention and renaming the server, or I guess you're changing your management group because we bind to your SCOM management group. So let's say you're moving from 2012 to 2016, you decide actually, you know, I'm going to blow the whole thing away. I want a brand new fresh management group. That license, your existing license isn't going to work with that. You try and reactivate and you're going to get this error message.
Exactly.
Right, okay. So in that case, contact Squared Up and we give you a new key or give you a new activation. And you can just activate. Cool. Okay. So that's the error message that you might get. There's another error message that comes up quite commonly, isn't there, to do with licensing that your users might get?
Yes. So you're probably aware of is that our licensing is based on named users. So you have a limited number of named users, and once you reach that limit, you'll get a message like this, or as Matthew said, one of your users who's like signing into Squared Up maybe for the first time will see this and see they don't have access.
Yeah, that's not great when they have that happens to them. Okay, so you mentioned the named user. So can you walk us through what a named user actually is?
Sure. So a named user is someone who can log in with Squared Up and log in using their SCOM credentials, and everything they see and everything they can do adheres to SCOM's role-based access control. They have kind of interactive access to Squared Up. So that means they can drill down into objects, different layers of data, take actions, edit and create dashboards if they have the necessary permissions.
Right.
And that's in contrast to another feature we have.
Oh, open access, right.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so like if you have an open access user, they don't have to be in SCOM. They are effectively like a wall screen, or they're the CIO or your boss or someone who doesn't need to click around. He wants to see a screen, there's a dashboard. I can see red, green. Yeah, and if it's red, I'm going to go and shout at someone else. I'm not going to drill down.
It's one layer of data. You can't drill down. So yeah, that's just, I guess, what the majority perhaps of people who kind of interact with Squared Up in your organization might see.
Cool. So we talked about role-based access control in Squared Up as well, actually, in some previous coffee breaks. So if you haven't heard of that before and you're thinking, oh, actually, users can create dashboards, go and definitely check out that previous episode. I think it was episode 6 or 7. It's one of our sort of earlier ones on role-based profiles and how Squared Up interacts with SCOMs. sort of RBAC. So just to summarize, named users, they're the ones who can use it interactively. We charge you for those. Open access users, as many of those as you like, and they'll never get any sort of license activation screens or anything like that. You can have as many of those as you want.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you do hit your named user limit, what are your options?
Right. So it kind of depends on the exact scenario. So for example, if you have, say, 10 named users, and you only need maybe one more, and maybe one of your previous or kind of current users is no longer using Squared Up, you might, in that case, want to reallocate your named user licenses.
Okay.
So you might need to remove someone from your named user list and then add someone on.
Okay, so let's have a look at Squared Up and see how you do that. So I go to
So
settings.
yeah, exactly. In the top right hamburger menu, and go to settings.
And then licensing, I'm guessing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
Oh no, sorry. Named user. Named users. My mistake. So here you're able to see a list of licensed users, and so for example, in the example of having 10 named users, you can see all 10, and then you will see maybe the person that you can remove. You then remove that user, and then if your new user would want to kind of log in, that's absolutely fine. What we have enabled is automatic license allocation.
Right, that's the option at the top here.
Yeah, exactly. So that means that kind of if you have spare kind of spaces in your named user kind of license list, then people will automatically be allocated a license.
So this is sort of auto enrollment, basically, isn't it? The first time a Windows user comes to Squared Up, you check to see if they got permissions in SCOM, and if they have, great, we'll automatically give them a named user license, and they're now licensed forever, kind of thing, or until you remove them.
Yes.
And if you turn that off, then you can manually control who goes in this list at the cost of the fact that you get a new starter, you'll need to come in and enable this, and they won't be able to get into SCOM otherwise.
Precisely, yeah.
Right, okay then. So that's probably a good sort of thing. If you're tight on licenses, perhaps you're going to enable that automatic allocation just to handle sort of those cases. And we've got this blocked option here as well. I guess that's just so that if you do want automatic allocation on, but you don't want someone coming in here.
Someone who's like being very pesky and always signing into Squared Up without permission. And also you can do things like pre-allocate kind of named user licenses. So before people even kind of sign into Squared Up, they already have a named user license allocated. So you can say pre-allocate 7 of your named user licenses and then leave 3 kind of up for grabs.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So you could like maybe have your entire like IT desk team who you know should always have access, pre-allocate them, and then if you've got other teams in sort of branch sites or some other departments who may access Squared Up, but you're not necessarily sure if they will or not, you can then use the rest of your licensing space for those guys. Yeah. Okay, cool. So that makes sense. Actually, I have to go back to the licensing tab because it is kind of helpful to note that this is where you can see when your license expires. And obviously, it's very worth checking this because as of today, Squared Up doesn't sort of notify you when its license is going to expire. I guess you guys will contact users when the renewal's coming up.
Yeah, so typically we get in touch kind of maybe 3 months before the renewal date, and then kind of stay in touch from then just to kind of help you through the process.
Right, so if you're not repeatedly checking this, probably worth unblocking squareup.com from your spam filter then.
yeah, absolutely. Don't want it to just kind of die in the middle of nowhere. So,
cool. Yeah. Okay, and this is also where you can also activate a new license file if you've still got access to Squared Up as well.
Yep.
That's kind of cool. Okay, so that makes sense. So that's sort of troubleshooting license activation. So there is one other issue that you mentioned before that people tend to sort of raise quite a bit, which is really more one for existing customers, but that would be V2.
Yes. So V2 and V3 licenses, they're not kind of they have different license architectures. Basically, they're not directly compatible. So if you are kind of on V2 and you try and use your V2 kind of primary license, one reason why it might not work is the fact that you don't have another activation, which we've talked about, but also it's not a compatible kind of license type. Okay. So if you're in that situation, definitely just kind of reach out to us and we'll help you through the migration process.
So everyone who's a V2 customer, because of the annual subscription model we've got, they're all eligible to a free upgrade to V3. So there's no extra charge for that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Cool. So in terms of the actual migration process, we talked about this before on a previous coffee break from a more technical perspective around doing the migration. So again, go and check that out if you're interested and haven't yet moved from V2 to V3. But from a licensing perspective and a sort of commercial perspective, how that effectively works is that we'll give you an evaluation license.
Correct, yeah.
Which is valid for 45 days. And that's just great for doing your UAT testing, right? So you don't just want to cut straight over, because we haven't migrated necessarily all of the features in V2, and some of the things we've done with Total Dashboard architecture kind of completely changed the game in terms of how you previously would have built dashboards. So it's kind of, we talked about this in the previous coffee break, but this is a good sort of time to evaluate how you're using Squared Up and kind of what your monitoring objectives are. So build that server in sort of your UAT environment or side by side with your V2 server. You've got a month and a half to kind of play around with it and build some dashboards and decide whether it's right for you and migrate your existing content using our migration tool. And then once you're ready to go over, that's when they need to get back in touch with us, right?
Exactly, yeah. So so once you're kind of done with your kind of user acceptance testing, and you'd like to switch to V3 in production, just drop us a line at sales@squaredup.com and we'll help you with that. So something again to note about the kind of test license is kind of no matter what your V2 kind of license package is, that test license will be enabled for unlimited named users and have all of the new features in V3. So there's some really exciting features that I definitely recommend that you check out during that period.
Cool.
So it's a great opportunity for that.
Cool. Again, another chance maybe to think about sort of how you're using Squared Up and perhaps try out the sort of higher SKU stuff. Excellent. And it's worth noting as well, once you have moved over to V3 in production, we do give you a grace period for support on your V2 instance as well. So
yes,
if you do cut over Saturday night, while everyone else is out, and Monday morning it's not working properly and you need to fail back to V2 temporarily, then we do support that sort of stuff as well.
Exactly. So in addition to those 45 days for the test license, so the evaluation license, you have an additional kind of 45 days in which you can run V2 and V3 in parallel while you kind of like transition.
Okay, cool. So that really should help everyone sort of get across without any sort of real issues there.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So that's sort of, we've talked now, I think, about sort of some of the common issues and some of the things that existing customers will face. We've got a slide or two now focused on sort of upgrading your license and some of the sort of the commercials and the feature sets and things like that. So if you're an existing customer and you're perfectly happy with your existing license and you don't want to upgrade and look at any new features or anything else like that, then feel free to drop off the webinar now because the next few slides probably won't interest you that much. And thanks for joining us. But otherwise, let's take a look at sort of how we actually go about upgrading and co-terming and all that sort of thing.
Great.
Okay, so we've got a pretty simple model. Nathan, can you walk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so first thing to note is that we license per SCOM management group. So if you have multiple kind of SCOM management groups that you want to license with Squared Up, then you'll need kind of multiple licenses for that. So just to kind of tie it into the start of the kind of webinar. If you have a separate test environment, that's kind of a different kind of situation. We're talking about kind of multiple primary SCOM management groups. Then you'll need multiple kind of enterprise packages for Squared Up. And like we said before, licensing is based on named users. And there are discounts available for 3 and 5 year kind of upfront subscriptions. Okay,
right. So if you purchase I Want Squared Up for 5 years, you get a discount on top of that.
Yes. So 15% discount for 3 years. 25% discount for 5 years.
And if I say buy a 5-year license with a certain number of users and then a year in go, actually I need a load more, that's easy enough to upgrade?
Absolutely. So at any point you can request an upgrade and we'll give you a kind of a co-termed quote. And this will just take into account kind of what you've used so far and what you're upgrading to. And we'll co-term it to your kind of subscription end date.
Right. So no retroactively paying for...
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. That makes sense. And then we've got 3 different editions of Squared Up that have a couple of different features and stuff as well, haven't we? So some of you might be on a Community Edition license.
Yep. So that's our kind of free license that has kind of a lot of great kind of basic SCOM dashboarding kind of features, but it's missing quite a lot of the advanced features. The Enterprise Starter Pack has things like open access and HA support. And then the Enterprise Application Monitoring kind of edition has all features and kind of 20 or more named users.
Yeah, and that if you haven't sort of been on our webinars sort of recently and checked out sort of the news on the blog and stuff, that 20 EAM SKU is actually quite new, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's
with
very
the launch
new.
of 3.2, we released that one. So
Exactly.
if you've previously been there with like, you've got like 20 users and you thought, I just can't quite justify buying an EAM for Vader. Now actually, great, you can get hold of that and have all those sort of advanced features. I'm just going to flip to the our licensing page actually. So if you go to squaredup.com/pricing and scroll down a bit, there's actually a chart here where we show you all the different features.
Yes, so so here you can see, for example, the kind of difference between Enterprise Starter Pack and the Enterprise Application Monitoring Edition is that EAM has Vader and it has OMS and Web API. So essentially kind of plug into more external data sources and it has Vader. Something to note here though is that like I said, like we said in the kind of beginning of the webinar, both of these are enterprise kind of license packages. So they all have production, a secondary, and a test dev license.
Right. So you can have HA even with an ESP, even just 10 users, you can still have that functionality if you need that. And then we have sort of the named users are basically a bit a la carte, aren't they? But there's price breaks as well. So I think if you change the drop down here, you can see those.
Exactly. Yeah. So so we do have kind of standard kind of per user per year costs. So if you want 25 named users, just let us know. That's absolutely fine.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to get kind of the best value, we do have price breaks at those levels. So 50, 100, 250. The kind of per user cost kind of quite significantly reduces.
Mm-hmm. And in the case of like if you've got multiple management groups, you'd need to buy ESPs or EAMs to cover all the different management groups. And I guess you could also can you buy like licenses at different levels? So if you've got one management group where you think they're not going to use OMS and Web API, they just need to access some dashboards, that's an ESP.
Mm-hmm.
And then my other management group, that's maybe my all singing, all dancing sort of main corporate environment, that can have an EAM. Is that possible?
Absolutely, yeah.
Cool. Okay, that makes that pretty simple. And the other thing that's worth noting, of course, with the price is that often it might make sense to buy the next SKU up, even if you don't have that many users, just because actually it's so close. Like if you need 17 users, it's probably worth actually buying the EAM 20 just because of the features that you get for the extra like 3 users that you might need.
Exactly. I think that kind of a big change that's been happening with version 3 over the last kind of few months is that we kind of switch the emphasis to features rather than named users, because there's so much kind of additional value in Vader and in kind of Web API integration, for example. More people are kind of switching over just for the features, and the named user kind of count is a bonus, or potentially you might kind of really need it because you're expanding kind of usage.
Mm-hmm.
But it is very much about features.
Okay, cool. Now, I think we mentioned this before, but I just wanted to make sure we cover this. If right now I'm a CE customer and I want to go to EAM because I've finally got funding, or the features are really enticing me or whatever, do I need to reinstall the whole thing to upgrade, or is it in place, just whack a new license key in?
Yeah, so it's in place. So it's just a simple kind of license key change. So you don't have to do anything. I mean, things that you can kind of do on top of that is that now your production instance will be compatible with HA, so you can use a secondary license, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it's a simple license key change to upgrade.
So unless there's a massive scale difference, I mean, it's unlikely you're a CE customer going straight to 250.
Yeah.
But unless you need to re-architect for scale, probably you can just put the license key in and you're ready to go.
Exactly.
Cool. Excellent. Well, I hope that sort of answered everyone's sort of questions and sort of addressed some issues with licensing that we sort of commonly see on support. Obviously, if at any point you have any issues or questions with anything to do with licensing or activation, I guess the best thing to do is get in touch with us, support@squaredup.com, and then you can sort of ask any questions you might have around activation or limits or anything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Excellent. Well, I know we usually run long on our webinars, but I think today we're going to actually run to time, which is quite nice. So I'm going to wrap up now and just head to the slide deck and do some resources. So if you haven't yet taken the coffee break survey on squaredup.com/topics, please do. This allows us to actually tailor these sessions to what people actually request. So people asked for a session on licensing, and here we go, we delivered. And there's also a free form field there, so you can vote on your favorite topics, but you can also go on there and say, hey, I've got this problem, my boss has asked me for this, I haven't seen any guidance on it. Make that just a topic, and we'll hopefully try and cover that in a future episode. So it's definitely worth doing that if you haven't done so already. If you want to see what's coming up next, or if you've got a colleague where you think, actually, this is great content, he'd really enjoy this as well, you can go to squaredup.com/coffeebreakseries, our microsite there, see the schedule, and you can also, there's a registration form. So any colleagues or friends you might have who want to watch this content as well, they can go there, sign up, and register for the next webinar that's coming up. The recordings and slides from this, along with all our other content, is published via our blog. So there's a load of cool stuff that's constantly being published there, so definitely go and check that out if you haven't done so in a little while. And we also have a YouTube playlist for this coffee break series. We've covered so many topics. And I think this is the 19th coffee break we've done now.
Or 20th. Oh, no,
it's
so
19th.
the introduction.
It's number 19th. We'll have to do something special next week.
This is special.
So yeah, go and check that if you haven't done so already. There's loads of stuff there on like role-based access control and perspectives and custom labeling, and we've done case studies with customers. So it's really, really worth going and checking that out if you're sort of new to Squared Up and haven't seen that before. Okay, as always, our engineering team are online, as well as myself and Nathan. So if you have any questions, feel free to use the webinar chat to post questions, and we'll try and answer those as best we can. If not, thanks for joining us, guys, and have a great day. And thank you for joining me, Nathan.
All right, no worries. Happy to be here. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks, guys. Bye.